It was barely 9 in the morning when I stumbled out onto my deck, coffee in hand, thinking the hardest decision I'd have to make was whether to fish or just stare at the lake. But nope, the universe had something special cooked up for me. Right there on my old fishing boat, as blinding as a migraine at sunrise, was a sticker so neon orange you'd think it was biohazard tape. Violation, immediate removal ordered by HOA. I swear, sometimes I wonder if life's just punking me. For a second, I just stood there, barefoot, hot coffee sloshing onto my toes, staring at my boat like it was a beached whale that had somehow committed a crime. And then, like clockwork, she appeared. Karen Tillman, queen of the HOA, strutting down the dock with her Bluetooth headset, clipboard glued to her arm like she was about to launch a missile strike, pointing at my boat like she'd just uncovered a terrorist plot in the reeds. I almost laughed. Honest. Actually, I did. And that's when hot coffee splashed down my foot, burning me back to reality. Karen was already shouting from across the dock, her voice echoing off the water, telling me I had 48 hours to move my boat, or else I'd be swimming in fines, county complaints, maybe even lose lake access. Which is hilarious, by the way, since I own the lake. Not lease. Not rent. I mean, I have the deed tucked away in a safe, water rights and all, down to the last cattail. But, as always, Karen hadn't bothered with the details. That's when I knew this little sticker was just the opening act in a full-blown circus. So, I set my coffee down, calm before the storm, and I walked right over, pebbles biting into my heels, and asked, as gently as I could, "Karen, are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" She barely glanced up, muttered into her headset, "He's non-compliant," and strutted off like she'd just delivered a final verdict from Mount Olympus. I knew right then that ignoring the sticker wouldn't cut it. If the HOA wanted a war over a boat on my own lake, I'd give them a front-row seat to a masterclass in property law. At first, it was almost funny. Every morning, a new fine, blue gel signatures from Karen like she was signing autographs for her own anger management club. She even put my boat in the HOA newsletter, a full-page zoom-in calling me a community rule breaker endangering lake harmony. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my tackle box. But it stopped being funny the day I overheard her at the clubhouse, telling other board members that once my boat was gone, she'd push for dock removal, too. That's when I realized she wasn't just coming for my boat. She was coming for my peace, my sanctuary, the one place that actually felt like home. So gloves off. I called Martin, my old college roommate, now a county assessor. We met at the edge of my property, rolling out a massive survey map across his tailgate, tracing the squiggly ink lines that mapped every inch of shoreline. Martin, grinning, confirmed what I already knew. I owned the lake, all the way from the dock planks down to the mud. He even joked that if I wanted, I could kick every HOA kayak, paddleboard, and unicorn floaty off the water. That night, standing on my dock under the moon, the water calm as glass, I realized the best revenge wasn't loud. It was silent, legal, and final. So instead of moving my boat, I moved paperwork. My lawyer drafted a formal notice, revoking all HOA boating privileges for trespassing. 100 copies, thick paper, handed out at the next Saturday brunch like party favors at a funeral. The look on Karen's face, reading that letter, she went from angry pink to sheet white in under a minute. She tried to argue bylaws, but my lawyer just pulled out the deed and the survey. The clubhouse went silent, then erupted. Board members scrambling for their phones, Karen calling for votes no one was interested in giving. All that over a sticker on a boat. But that wasn't the end, just the warm-up act. Monday morning, I posted new signs at every lake entrance. Private waters. Access restricted. Violators will be towed. Laminated maps marking every property line. By noon, 3 kayaks had retreated. Karen left me a voicemail, which started out all sugar and ended with her slamming a drawer so hard it echoed through the phone. I called my lawyer again. We mailed out lease agreements, premium rates, especially for Karen and her friends. I watched her open the letter, her face turning every shade from confusion to indignant to, "I'm about to faint." That night, the HOA held an emergency meeting. I wasn't invited, but Tom, my neighbor and former treasurer, who Karen ousted in her last power grab, called me after, barely containing his laughter. Karen tried to sell it as a miscommunication, but people just wanted to know why they couldn't use the lake and why Karen hadn't bothered to check who owned it in the first place. Her answer? She threatened to build her own lake. Yeah, you heard me. Build her own lake. The next HOA newsletter came out full of passive-aggressive poetry about selfish landholders and water hoarders. I framed it. A couple of days later, she organized a community paddle parade to shame me, a flotilla of kayaks and floaties with glittering streamers. But, trespassing is still trespassing, even with sparkly life jackets. So I called the sheriff, Deputy Joe Keller, who just happens to be my cousin's brother-in-law. He showed up, flashed the lights, politely reminded everyone of the law, and when Karen tried to argue, he just stared at her and asked, "Ma'am, are you making a point or just making noise?" Someone caught it on video. It went viral, 30,000 views and a sea of popcorn emojis. Karen tried to pivot, hosting a town forum on Lake Unity. 5 people showed up, one just for the donuts. She set up a lake usage committee, stacked with retirees, failed realtors, and Dennis, who wore 2 Bluetooth headsets like he was running a sting operation. They pitched rotating dock schedules and lake time allocations, basically a bureaucratic tax on my property. I handed them an invoice instead, retroactive lease fees, late charges, every single boat launch documented. Dennis nearly choked on his coffee. Karen turned a color that doesn't have a name. Someone suggested, maybe we should just pay him. And that was the mask slipping. After that, the emails started pouring in, neighbors asking for lease terms, discounts for seniors. I kept it fair and friendly, made it clear I was never out to punish the community, just to put a check on the HOA's power trip. Karen tried to regain control with a neighborhood vote, failed. Ran a survey to boycott the lake, more no's than yes, plus a few creative insults in the comment box. She filed a complaint with the County Lakeside Oversight Committee, dragging me into a 2-hour hearing in a freezing room, complete with color-coded binders and a poster of me fishing, circled in red like I was America's Most Wanted. I showed up with my lawyer and the deed. The panel took 10 minutes to rule in my favor. Karen tried to appeal and was told appeals required more than emotional dissatisfaction. As we left, I offered the panel a signed copy of Karen's angry newsletter. That same week, 2 board members resigned. Another left a note. Didn't sign up for lake warfare. Karen tried to win back hearts with a Save Our Shoreline gala. 10 people showed up, the band canceled, and she poured cheap wine to elevator jazz. Meanwhile, I installed solar boundary lights all around the lake. Neighbors started stopping by, not to complain, but to ask advice about fighting HOA bullies. The local paper picked up the story. Local man wins back lake from HOA. Karen, ever the brand, declared this was just a ripple in a larger wave. She started plotting her comeback from within the HOA. But Tom and I, we'd done our homework. There was a clause, 2 complaints, 30% petition, recall vote. So, quietly, no drama, I collected signatures. 35 was the magic number. I delivered them, hand to the HOA secretary, who looked like I'd just handed him the Holy Grail. 7 days later, recall vote. Karen went full campaign mode. Unity cookouts, overcooked hot dogs, special sashes. She even published a newsletter accusing me of planning to drain the lake for a helipad. Nobody bought it. On vote day, the clubhouse was packed, so tense you could hear someone's phone vibrating under a chair. Karen gave a speech, all fire and fear, warning of chaos without her leadership. The count came in, 63 for recall, 18 against. No cheering, just a long, collective exhale. Karen picked up her clipboard, left without a word, heels clicking like a sad little drumbeat. Tom became president, stripped out half the rules, recognized my lake as private property, dissolved all the committees. The next morning, I took my boat out at sunrise, lake calm, air fresh, neighbors waving. Peace. But, of course, that's not the end of any story with a Karen. A few days later, a new sign popped up at the clubhouse. Members only. Karen had started her own rogue HOA, complete with fake rules and the same handwriting as those old violation slips. Her inner circle clung to her like barnacles, but most people just wanted normalcy again. She fired off bogus noise complaints, sent out lake safety warnings, stuffed flyers in mailboxes warning that I was a threat to the community. I collected every last bit of it, every flyer, every complaint. Filed a formal complaint for harassment and misuse of personal data. While she threw her last brunches in that private clubhouse, I quietly bought the land under it, foreclosed and up for sale, just waiting for someone not blinded by a power trip. The final play, the deed was finalized, and the county called to confirm. That building, Karen's last outpost, was now mine. The next morning, I posted a new sign, private property, unauthorized access prohibited. The news spread like wildfire. Karen's followers faded away. She called, texted, even showed up at my dock, accusing me of betrayal, conspiracy, legacy theft. I didn't argue, just handed her the deed and told her she had 48 hours to vacate. She left quietly, no audience, no drama. The old clubhouse is now a real community center. Art classes, scout meetings, kids' science programs for families who'd never seen a lake up close. The air is different now, lighter, like we all got to breathe again. Neighbors bring muffins instead of complaints. One day, Tom handed me a newspaper clipping. Former HOA president fined for unauthorized signage. Just a little poetic justice. I didn't gloat. The lake was just a lake again, not a battlefield, not some HOA pawn. But, endings aren't always all sunshine. One evening, I spotted Karen alone at the water's edge, arms crossed, just staring. No anger, no apology, just lost, like she'd been fighting for something she never really understood. She read the new sign, turned, and walked away, out of the story, out of our lives. A week later, the whole neighborhood had a cookout at the news center. No banners, no rules, just laughter and good food. Kids at the shoreline, old neighbors shaking my hand, one of them leaning in and saying, "We didn't know we needed someone to own the lake until someone finally did it right." And I guess that's the real truth. Sometimes, the quietest revolutions start with someone just refusing to move their boat. That night, I lit a lantern on the dock, watched the ripples spread across the water. No more stickers, no more drama, just peace. The kind you only get by standing your ground and saying no when it counts. You know what I mean? So, you tell me, who was right, who was wrong, and what does justice even look like in a neighborhood war? Drop your thoughts below, because maybe, in the end, the only line that matters is the one you refuse to let somebody else cross.